So this training is on email analytics, and as I said, my name is Beth Allen. I am the Online Communications Director at CWA. I've been there about 13 years now, and I'm glad, thank the AFL for inviting me to do this training because I really enjoy sharing information about email and digital strategies. So just a quick word on 1U. This is called the 1U Digital Training Series, and it's called that because 1U is the hashtag that people use on Twitter when they're talking about union issues. If you're not on Twitter yet, you can take the Twitter 101 digital training course or refer to the slides that are up online from the one that was run a few months ago. But we use 1U to tag conversations in Twitter. Now you can tag hashtag conversations in Facebook as well. So that's why it's called that. As I said, my name is Beth Allen, and I'm the Online Communications Director at CWA. And in this training, I will be providing an overview of the reports and analytics that are available in Salsa and an introduction to doing some testing, that Salsa's tool for doing A/B testing of messages. And if you don't know what that means, I hope you will by the end of the presentation. On the agenda, we're first going to talk a little bit about Salsa, then a little bit about what analytics are, email analytics, for those of you for whom that may not be a familiar term. Talk a little bit about delivery and open statistics, a little basic testing, and then take some questions. So Salsa. Salsa is the email and advocacy tool that the AFL-CIO makes available to state feds and CLCs at no charge. And I wanted to just go over this because we had some questions about it in the last training I did at the end, and so I want to make sure everyone sort of understands what I'm talking about when I talk about Salsa. Union locals may also have access to Salsa through their union, through their international. Some internationals make it available to locals and some do not, but Chris Kengott at the AFL-CIO can help you connect either to Salsa if you are a state fed or a CLC, or to the right person at your union to talk more about it. And you can reach Chris at ckengott, that's CKENNGOTT, at aflcio.org if you have any questions about Salsa. So email analytics, what do we mean when we say email analytics? Well, analytics is not just another word for data or statistics. What analytics is it's the process of looking at that data, looking at those statistics to see patterns that can help you make decisions about your email program. And so we're going to talk today about how to find those statistics in Salsa and the kinds of decisions you might make based on those statistics. So what questions should you be asking about your email program? And I want to sort of talk about three things that you should be considering about your email program and how the data can help guide those decisions. The first thing is, are your messages being delivered? The second is, are they being opened? And the third is, are they taking the actions you want them to take as a result of the email? So you want to know whether the emails are getting there in the first place, if they're getting there, whether or not people are opening them, and then if they're opening them, are they doing what you want them to do when they open that email message? In Salsa, you can find the information that will help you answer those questions in the Email Blasts tab. And to get started looking at the data, you click on the Summary Report link. Once you click on that link, you get this report, which lists all of the emails that you've sent and a few key statistics about those emails. On this page, on this report, the statistics are updated about once a day. But if you want to see real-time statistics, up-to-date statistics, you can click on the Live Details link over on the right-hand side of the screen. So it's over here. When you click on the link, you get the full details for a message. And I'm going to go over these statistics one by one so that you understand what each statistic is telling you. The first thing we have is total targeted supporters. Total targeted supporters is the number of deliverable email addresses that you targeted when you sent your message. So when you set up your message to send, you selected who you wanted to send it to, and this is the number of people that you wanted to send it to, minus any of the messages that Salsa knew at the time that you sent it weren't deliverable. So it only sends to addresses that are good on your system, and that's what that number is. The next number on this report is sent and received by ISP. And what that number is the number of messages that were actually delivered. So targeted supporters, how many people you thought you were going to send it to. Sent and received by ISP are the number that were actually delivered. And the next few rows on the report tell you why some of those messages might not have actually even made it to someone's inbox. So the first pair of statistics about emails that were not delivered are user unknown and other hard bounce. So when Salsa sends out an email message, it'll get a message back from the email server that it sent the message to. So if you send an email message to someone at gmail.com, Salsa server gets a message back from one of Gmail's email servers. The message might come back and say that the user account doesn't exist or that the server itself doesn't exist anymore. And then Salsa interprets this message as being user unknown or a hard bounce. When that happens, Salsa immediately marks the email record as being undeliverable because you don't want to continue to send messages to undeliverable email addresses. If you do that, as I discussed in a training I did a few weeks ago, you can quickly get labeled a spammer, and that can block messages not just for yourself but for everyone on the AFS-LCIO's Salsa system. So it's important not to do that. Salsa takes care of that list maintenance for you automatically. So that's what those numbers are. You can click on the details button, a details link next to either one of these, user unknown or other hard bounce, to get more information, to see who exactly did bounce. And this is an example. This is a list of people for that message who came up as user unknown. This is a good thing to review from time to time, your user unknowns, either by doing it right here message by message or by doing a query to find everyone who has that status for their email. Because you can often spot typographical errors right here in this list and correct them, possibly turning an undeliverable email address into a deliverable one. So for instance, on this list, I see a person on there who is jmiller2, jmiller2. It may not be on the screen shot, but it was jmiller2 at Comcast.net. And it looks to me like what happened when they were doing the action that added them to my list is that they inadvertently typed their first part of their email address twice. So if I click on that email address, I can go right to their member screen, and I can go ahead and edit that email address and make that correction right there within Salsa. And when I'm making the correction, it's also important that I change the received email status back to a deliverable status, in this case imported or unknown, which is the default deliverable status. So I'm going to go back. That was the old screen. And then I updated it so that I updated the email address and changed so this person could receive email. Again, you don't want to just change people's received email status from a hard bounce back to deliverable to try them again, because if you keep repeatedly trying to send to an address once an email server has told Salsa it's a bad address, you're very likely to get flagged as a spammer, so you really want to avoid that. But in individual cases, when you correct an address or when someone contacts you and says, I don't know why I'm not getting email, my email address is fine, then it's okay to go ahead and change them back on a case-by-case basis. So the next set of statistics that Salsa gives you is information about soft bounces. Soft bounces, and refused by receiving ISP and a few other categories, is a different kind of message that Salsa gets back from an email server. This message basically says the server is temporarily unavailable, the account was temporarily unavailable for some reason, but try again later. So it doesn't mean that the user doesn't exist, but it means there was some problem in delivering the message. Salsa does not mark these as undeliverable because the message says it's temporarily undeliverable, so it's fine to try again. When I'm looking at this information for a message, if I see a particularly large number of soft bounces, so it may have been a problem with a large provider. I see this frequently with Comcast, actually, that they will be refusing messages temporarily for a while. You can go back and resend your message to the people who bounced to try them again, to people who soft bounced to try them again. So that's one way you can use this information, is that if you're seeing a particularly large number for a message, you can go back and try again later to reach those folks. If you try again and you sort of have the same problem with the same ISP, so you see a huge number of refused by receiving ISPs for a particular carrier, you can also reach out to Salsa support folks to let them know about that so they can look into it to see if there's any sort of larger problem. But with the large carriers, they are on top of that and looking at their own system for large numbers of refusals and often have corrected the problem by the time you retry it. This is another place where you might find addresses with typographical errors that are soft bouncing instead of hard bouncing. So again, as part of our regular list maintenance, we go through and look at the bounces to see if there are any obvious errors in the domain name that we may need to change. You know, 2 L's in Gmail or .co instead of .com are common things we see, and go ahead and try to correct, which helps our overall program, making sure that the messages get to them. And finally, in this series of stats that are about delivery, there is the unsubscribe box. Now, unsubscribe tells you how many people you'll no longer be able to send to because you sent this message, essentially. It's a kind of a heartbreaking little box. But it tells you how many people proactively unsubscribe to your message, and it also repeats that number of how many people hard bounced, so that those people will be off your list, essentially. You will no longer be able to contact them because they unsubscribed. Again, it's not a good idea to resubscribe your unsubscribes unless someone has individually reached out to you and said, oh, I didn't mean to do that, I forwarded that message to someone else, and they clicked on the unsubscribe link, something like that. Because if you continue to contact people who have asked to be removed from your list, you could very quickly end up on a spam list. Now, every list is different in terms of unsubscribes and bounces. On average, organizations lose 12 to 20% of their list each year to unsubscribes and hard bounces. So that's why you need to constantly be building your list, which is a different topic. But it's not uncommon to get unsubscribes. What you want to look out for with unsubscribes is whether a particular message is generating an unusually high number of unsubscribes. So that's a reason to look at that statistic, and that may give you valuable information about how you're communicating with your list if a particular message or kind of message is generating a lot of unsubscribes. So all this is valuable information that can help your program and alert you to potential problems if, for instance, a particular domain is getting a high number of soft bounces. On the other side of this report, we have the open and conversion statistics. These give you even more valuable information. But in order to really understand what's going on here, I want to tell you a little bit about how Salsa determines whether or not someone has opened a message. So Salsa puts a tiny invisible image, which I've put up here on the screen, in every email that you send out. When someone opens that message, that graphic is downloaded from the Salsa server, and Salsa counts that download as an open. Now that matters because some people who are opening your messages won't be counted because they don't display images in their email client, or they're using some sort of plain text email reader. So in order for an open to count, people have to have enabled images in their email, and more clients are turning that off by default. People are not enabling the images, and so you're not picking up on those people who opened your message who didn't do that. So this statistic, just looking at the opens, is not great if what you're trying to figure out is whether or not a particular person opened a particular message, because you get a lot of people who open them that don't show up. So if you're going to want to send a message to everyone who didn't open it the first time, that probably wouldn't be a good idea based on this statistic or based on this data, because you cannot accurately know that. You'll end up resending the message to a lot of people who actually opened it. But the reason the open rate is useful is it provides you with useful comparison data over time. Over a certain time frame, you can assume that the people who have images turned off have them on, turned on have them on, so you're kind of looking at the same crowd, and you get a feel for what those open rates are. So the opens are reported both as a raw number and as a percentage. The percentage is the number of opens divided by the number of messages sent and received by the ISP. So it's the number of opens divided by this number over here, the sent and received by ISP number. That way, an unusual number of bounces, hard bounces, soft bounces won't affect your open rates. So it's a way to sort of account for that. The other statistic over here is click-throughs. Click-throughs tell you how many people who received your message actually clicked on at least one link in your message. Now, these are actual clicks. Unlike opens, the click tracking works whether or not someone has images displayed in their email. Now, the one caveat about this statistic is that the click-throughs count all the links in your message. So, for instance, if someone clicked through but they clicked on an unsubscribe link, that gets counted. So it doesn't really, I'll talk about this more in a little bit, but you want to keep that in mind when you're looking at the click-through rate. This particular message had a particularly high unsubscribe rate, at least for this list. Now, the reason was that I happen to know for this message is that it was going out to people who I'd tried to get to respond several times on this issue and who had not yet participated in the campaign. And so by this point, a lot of them were getting sick about hearing about it, so they unsubscribed. And that was expected with this particular list. But that kind of, that high click-through rate of 5% in this case is a result of 1,000 of those being because people clicked on the unsubscribe link. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing this. Now, Salsa also lets you know further down the page which links someone clicked on, which can also be very helpful when you're looking at those clicks. Because you may be wondering where it's best to put the links in your message, or you want to do some kind of more precise analysis and exclude the non-action links when you're calculating your click-through rate. You might do some handwork there and figure out, okay, how many people really click through to take an action or to go to a web page or something like that. And so you can look and see which particular links were clicked on in a message. But this click-through stat here is anyone. It counts people and not clicks. So how many people clicked on at least one link in the message, and that's what that number is. If your message contained a link to a Salsa advocacy campaign, Salsa will also report how many people took action directly from that email message, and that's called the conversion rate. Number of conversions and the percentage of conversions Salsa provides you with. The percentage is calculated by dividing the number of conversions by the number of messages sent and received, just like everything else. They use a sent and received number and not the targeted number to calculate the conversions for a message. Now, in general, email open rates for advocacy messages, so messages where you're asking people to take an online action, range from about 12% to 17%. Click-through rates range from about 3 to 5%, and conversion rates range from about 1 to 5%. But every list is different. And these statistics are really more useful for comparing your own results during testing or over a period of time than for comparing yourself to other organizations, because other organizations may be managing their lists in a very different way from the way you're managing your list. So if I were really aggressive about taking people off of my list who aren't opening my messages, I'll have a much higher open rate than someone who sort of just lets those emails stay on their list and never takes them off. And we talked about that a little bit in the email management presentation a few weeks ago. So, you know, it's tempting to compare yourself to other organizations, and it's good to have a kind of a sense of what a range is for different kinds of messages. But really, the use of these statistics is to look at your own list and the behavior over time or the behavior for a particular test. Now, as you're doing that, it can be a lot easier to look at that data if you're able to download it and look at it in Excel or Access or some other program. So Salsa gives you a way to export these statistics. If you scroll down to the bottom of the email summary report, there's an Export As section in the lower right where you can choose to export it in a tab delimited format, or there's an Excel format that you can choose, and you can export all of those statistics about your email program. And then you can sort and take a look, and if you want to do some kind of different calculations on it, you can do that as well. If you want to group similar messages together and look at those, you can do that by exporting and taking a look at them in Excel. Now, before we move on to discuss testing a little bit, I want to talk about one other feature. Salsa also lets you look at statistics for a particular message by group. And group is something that you set up in supporter management, and you can set up groups of email addresses. This can be really useful when you want to look at how particular subgroups of your list are responding to a message. You may have your list divided up into groups by bargaining unit, and you're sending out a newsletter, and you want to see if you're engaging all the bargaining units kind of on an equal basis. Or you may have a leadership list, and you want to see if your leaders are opening your messaging more than other members. In this example that I'm going to show you, when you first click on the Show Groups, it shows you your overall statistics, and then you can choose a group, and I chose this group, which is a group of people who had previously participated in a Verizon campaign. Again, this message were people who had not already signed on to an NLRB petition campaign after many months of my asking. And so I wanted to know, well, did the people who previously participated in one of our Verizon campaigns do better or worse? Were they a really good target for this issue? Should I keep going to them on it, or are they not such a good target and maybe I should stop asking them because I'm getting a lot of unsubscribes, and maybe I want to just let that list sit for a while until there's an issue that these folks are more engaged on. So if I did a subset report there, it brings up, these are the stats. It says statistics for the group, allied imported from Stop Verizon Green. And unfortunately, it doesn't give you your benchmark for your main message right here on the screen. But I can look back at those statistics, and what I can see here is that this particular group had a higher open rate than the norm for the message, and a somewhat lower click-through rate. And unfortunately, this particular report doesn't give us the conversion rate to compare, but it does give you a sense of some general statistics if you want to compare groups. So those are the basic statistics that are available for you in Salsa, and they can help you do some analytics on that. The Statistics, like I said, are really good for looking at how your list is doing, how your messages are doing over time. Give you a sense. Are you getting high? Are you increasing your open rates? Are your open rates dropping even though it's the same list? Are you getting more unsubscribes or not? How's your click-through rate doing? What's the sort of average for your list? Did a particular message do better or worse than your own average? But if you want to know if a particular technique or tactic is working well in a particular email, the best thing to do is to run a test. Now, one of the common things to test, and one of the most important things you can test for a message, is the subject line. People react to the subject line when they're deciding whether or not to open an email. So these are the results of a subject line test I ran last month. And you can see there's a big difference in the open rates between the best performing and the worst performing subject lines. So I'm going to walk you through Salsa's tool for doing this kind of testing. If you want to do a test for a message, you set up the message as you normally would. So when you get to the summary page, if you have the email blast package installed for Salsa, and some of you may not have that, some of you may have a different email tool, and you can talk to your international if you're a local, or to Chris here at the AFL-CIO if you're a state or CLC, to talk about getting the email blast package that has the testing and the expanded reporting ability if you need to do that. But if you have that installed, what you'll see on the summary page is a link to create A/B split test blasts. So the first step to doing this is to click on that link. And once you click on that link, you get a little bit of information about what an A/B split test blast is. And then you get a button that appears that says Create A/B Split Blast. So you have to click that button, which then takes you to the page where you set up the test. First, you get to specify how much of your list you want to have receive your test. And again, you're testing before you send to your full list. You're going to test part of your list on the message to see how it performs, make a decision about which subject line, in this case, performed the best, and then send that message to the rest of the list. So it's testing techniques and tactics for a specific message. The default for the test is 5%, which is usually a good sample size for a message. Usually when I'm doing this, I go ahead and leave test A as whatever my original subject line, my default subject line was. And then I click the edit link next to test B. When you click that link, it opens up a panel that allows you to change the subject line. So you can enter the subject line that you want to test, and then click Save this email. Once you do that, you go back to this screen. It shows you the two subject lines that you'll be testing, and you can click Submit Test Blast next to each message. You have to click Submit Test Blast for each version of the test, and you don't want to click the big orange Submit Email Blast now, because that sends to the remainder of your list and defeats the purpose of the test. After you submit the test blast, you wait. In most cases, you'll have a pretty good idea about which subject line is performing better after a few hours. When you made a decision, you can either leave the default message as it is, or choose to replace the subject line with a subject line from one of your test messages if that performed better. You make your choice, and then you click on the big orange Submit Email Blast Now button to send the message to everyone who wasn't a part of either of the test groups. And that's the testing. You can also test different things. You don't have to just test subject line. You can, in that interface, click to edit the whole message. So you can test things like whether or not to have a button to take action in the message. You can test language within the message. You don't want to necessarily test multiple things with each test, so you don't want to combine a subject line and the content of one message with subject line and the content for a different message, because you want to isolate what's helping your response rates. So you may just do subject line tests, or you might do button testing, but not so much mix and matching, because then you kind of confuse your results. And there's more about the details of doing A/B split blast testing on Salsa's website in the support section if you want to know a little bit more about how to do testing of the message itself and not just the subject lines, but it's a very similar process. So to review a couple of things before we take questions, Salsa's built-in statistics can help you spot trends over time and make decisions that can help your overall email program. And testing allows you to determine which tactics are most effective for a particular message. Now, I've only really scratched the surface of some of this. There's really a whole lot you can think about in terms of analytics and testing. And there are a few places you can go for some next steps. One is Salsa custom reports. So the statistics I went over were the ones that were just readily available in Salsa, but Salsa also has a custom reporting tool that allows you to set up your own reports. So for instance, you may want to be able to pull statistics consistently for a particular subset of your messages. So let's say you have a newsletter that goes out regularly, we do, and we always put the word newsletter in the reference name for the message, so we can set up a report, a custom report in Salsa that pulls information about all of the emails that have that word newsletter in their reference name, so that we can easily do that and then download that and save us some time in terms of downloading information and doing reports in Excel. You can also do different kinds of calculations on your messages. Sometimes people like to look at the click-through rate not as a percentage of the mails sent, but as a percentage of the emails that have been opened, so they can do that there and do other kinds of reporting that way. So there's a link, and when this is posted online, you can click right through to it, to the information on Salsa about how to create those custom reports. The other thing that can be useful when you're doing analytics is to be able to tag the links in your email for Google Analytics, because if you're sending people from the email to your website, it can be really helpful to know what's driving traffic to that website. So by tagging the links in your email in a way that Google Analytics can understand, if you're using Google Analytics on your website, you can then say, oh, the September newsletter sent 500 people to the website, and the October newsletter, which we changed in some way to make the links better, sent 1,000 people to our website, or the story sent more people than that story. So you can tag those links so you can get useful information when you're driving people to your website about what's going on in the email. And so that link is a discussion about how effective ways to use those tags to make it accessible in Google Analytics. And then the last link, which is a little bit obscured on this slide because of the way the AT&T tool works, is the nonprofit benchmark study. And this is a study that a consulting firm does every year, which provides benchmarks for email performance. Again, you don't always want to be comparing yourself to other people, but I know sometimes you like to, and there's a lot of interesting information in there. The other thing that I think is really helpful about that study is it just gives you a sense of what kinds of statistics people track and are interested in, so that when you're looking in at your own email, you can look at those same statistics to give you a sense of how your program is doing. So that's a nonprofit benchmark study, and we have a link to that as well. So that's all the material that I wanted to present today, but I would love to take questions if anybody has them. You can either type them and send them to me as a note, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute your phone. So does anyone have any questions? All right, we're not seeing any questions, so we can wrap up. Just a minute. So thank you all for participating. And like I said, this presentation will be available online at the 1U Digital Training Series webpage sometime tomorrow, probably. So thank you very much. Bye.